I grew up in Melbourne. I went to school at Essendon, St Bernard's in Essendon, and I wandered around. I left school and found myself in Sydney one day. I thought, no one told me about this place. How good is this? And I've lived in Sydney ever since. Come back to Melbourne a lot, but I'm now, I've been a bookseller for, I don't know, 50 years nearly, and not quite. I'm married, 4 kids. Yeah.
And how did you become an antiquarian?
Look, I was a cab driver, and I was obsessed with books, and it got that way. I'd get a fare, and I knew where all the opportunity shops were and all the bookshops, and every day I'd make sure that I called into shops buying books, and I was getting a bit obsessive. Had too many books, and anyway, one day I'd been to a place called the White Elephant at Chatswood, and I'd bought all these Idris books, and they were all beautiful and signed and in dust wrapper, and a guy got, I had a few of them on the front seat of the cab, and a guy got in and he said, "Oh, look at these books." He said, "I collect Idris books." Wow, so one thing led to another, and I sold them to him. And that was the first time I'd ever sold a book. And I said to him, "Look, I've got more of these at home." So I organised to meet him the next day, and I sold him all my Idris books. And from that moment I became a bookseller. There was never anything else I wanted to do after that. And so it was my cab. I owned the cab, and I was 20, I don't know how old I was, 20 something or other, 27 or 8 or something. And so I decided I'd open a bookshop. And I didn't really know anything, you just do it all on a wing and a prayer. So I found this empty shop in Glebe Point Road. It had been empty for 3 years, and it was owned by the government. And I approached them, and they said, "Oh, yeah, you can, yeah, we'll let you rent it, but look, the council won't let us use it. If you can get council approval, we'll rent it to you, but only for 6 months because we're going to knock it down." So I went to the council and I said, "Look, I want to have a bookshop here." And they said, No, you can't do that." So I went to the local parish priest and I said, "Look, the council, they won't let me have the book. This is ridiculous." He said, "Oh, don't worry about that, I'll fix that." So he picked up the phone and he's rung the mayor. And the mayor said, well, yeah, well, that's all right." He said, "I'll send the town clerk around." So the next night the town clerk knocked on my door and we filled out the application form. And there it was. And then I went to the government. It was owned by the federal government, and or maybe it was the state government. Anyway, they said, "Oh, that's amazing, you've got approval." So we got approval and I opened a bookshop. And I just put all the books I had at home. And I opened it with I knew this woman. She was about, I don't know, 30 years older than me. And her name was Nan Waterford. And so we went and did it together. Knew nothing about books really, knew absolutely nothing about selling books. And so anyway, after about a year, Nan said, I wanted to go full on, we're doing this as a sort of a hobby, part-time thing. And Nan said, no, you take it over. And so I bought Nan out, and for the first 3 years, I used to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd drive the cab till about 9 o'clock, 9:10. Then between about 9 and 11, I'd run around buying books, and then I'd have the shop open till 6 o'clock at night. Then I'd go and open the shop and do the same. And then after about 2 or 3 years, I sold the cab and just had the bookshop, and it went from there. I subsequently opened 2 other bookshops. I opened a bookshop my first bookshop was in Glebe Point Road, Glebe, and I ended up, the government changed their policy and I ended up buying the building. And then I opened another bookshop in King Street, Newtown, which is perhaps akin to Brunswick here. and I had the shop open till midnight. Used to open from 10 o'clock in the morning till midnight. There was a very high turnover. We used to sell, $10,000, $15,000 worth of books a week there. Mostly cheaper stuff, but lots of good stuff too. And then I opened a third shop in Glebe Point Road, not far from the first one. And the original shop, I kind of turned it into antiquarian only and got rid of all the paperback stuff. So I had 3 bookshops going. I had about 20 staff. And you're chasing your ass all the time and running around, but I loved every minute of it, and I loved buying and selling, and I loved the people and the customers and the suppliers and the auctions, and I was at auction all the time. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and one day you wake up, you're 65, and you're thinking, I've been doing this for a long time. And people were wanting to buy the building, so I sold the building and shut the shop. The idea was I was going to retire, and I owned my house and I owned and I thought I don't need to work. Anyway, got rid of the stock, sort of. Had a huge half-price sale and got rid of it, and I thought I'm going to retire. And after about 2 days, I said, fuck this retirement business, is no good. And I got a phone call from a woman that was Helen Kemsley, and her late husband had been the Ginger Megs artist. And he had a collection of Norman Lindsay books, a fabulous collection. And he'd died a couple of years earlier. And Helen said, yeah, look, it's time I have to sell this collection of James's. So I thought, I'm going to be an auctioneer. I'll auction these. Not that I just have one auction. And anyway, the long and the short, I sold that collection for $320,000. And so my first auction was a success because I sold it as a collection, and I had other books. So I sold about $450,000 worth in that first auction. And I thought, maybe I'll do this. So then I rented a premises, as you do, and we had about 10 auctions there, and then the building got sold to I got kicked out because they sold the building to build another badly needed block of units around the area, and now I'm renting another premises in Ultimo, and we're having auction 80 next Friday. And I love the auction business, it's fabulous. We've got way too many books to auction. I've got enough, if I have 2 auctions a month, I've got enough books to last till December. And it's a whole lot of fun. And I've had fabulous people work for me over the years. Some of them are now professors and doctors and all sorts of things. And I've travelled the world. I was on the ANZAAB committee, International League of Antiquarian Booksellers. I was on that committee for 10 years. I was secretary and treasurer and all sorts of things. We used to meet 2, sometimes 3 times a year, mostly in Europe, but sometimes in America, Europe. I think we had one meeting in Asia. And at one stage, I hadn't been on the ILAB committee for long, and I thought, this is all bullshit. They think of ILAB as a European organisation with sort of America attached, and they don't acknowledge Asia or Australia. So there was a man called, a Japanese man, what's his name? My God, anyway, fabulous man, and he was a doyen of Japanese booksellers. So I sat with him and said, look, this is all bullshit, and we've got to do some more in Asia. So we decided we'd have a book fair in Hong Kong. So I was sort of the chief cook and bottle washer of all that, and we had a book fair in Hong Kong, and we got something like 70 exhibitors. It was amazing, and it was a fantastic experience. And I had to go to Hong Kong a lot, and then we did it again for 2 or 3 or 4 years or something. And then someone else took it over. So Oh, the book selling, I've made friends all around the world. Nita was the Japanese man, Mitsuo Nita. Uh, and so book selling took me to Japan lots. Early on, I exhibited in 1990 at the Japanese Book Fair, and which was a bit daring and adventurous, but I met some library suppliers, and I ended up supplying every year. I used to make collections and I'd sell the collections to these library suppliers in Japan. I actually had a few years where I sold far more books in Japan than I did in Australia, and I was having 3 shops in Australia, and I was selling more books in dollar terms in Japan than I was here. And I used to go to Japan quite often, and in Hong Kong I used to spend quite a lot of time there, and I met people all around the world, and some made really fabulous friends, and